Mini-stack is the most popular stack for building the applications that developers are using across the world. This course is all about how to set up a mini-stack application and perform the CRUD operations. In this course, you will learn about how to set up a mini-stack application from scratch. So first I will tell you about the mini-stack app structure which we are going to follow in this training program. Then we talk about here how we can define the model using the Mongoose. So Mongoose is a ODM tool which will help us to query the MongoDB in object-oriented fashion. Then we will set up here the database. So how we can set up the database connection string so that we can easily make the connection with the MongoDB database with the help of Mongoose. Then we will build the REST API using the Express.js. Further we will test the REST API using the Postman, and finally we will configure our front end with the help of Angular, and with the help of Angular we will perform the CRUD operations. So these are the various topics you are going to learn in this training program. To get started with this training program, make sure you are familiar with Angular and Express.js. If you are not familiar with Angular and Express, I suggest you please refer to the .NET X Angular courses and Node.js Angular courses. And for the tools, make sure you have installed the Node.js, Angular CLI, VS Code, MongoDB Compass, and Postman. So these are the various tools we are going to use in this training program for testing, debugging, and writing our code. I hope you will join me in this journey to learn Angular and Express with CRUD operations using mini-stack on .NET X. See you in the class. If you are coming to the channel first time, I request you to please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon so that the information about such valuable courses will get notified. So let's get started with the course. Mini-stack app structure. Now let's understand how we will design our mini-stack app. So here we will create the backend using the Express.js. So here we will define the controllers for writing our logic so that we can query the data from the database. So here we will use the ORM as a Mongoose. So Mongoose is a ODM, it's a object data model which is used with the Node.js to query the MongoDB. Routing we will define here, models we will have, so that what are the models we have defined here, those we can map to the document in the MongoDB. So here with the help of Mongoose we will query our MongoDB database, and whatever the requests are received by the backend here, so that data we will send to the front end. So front end here we will build using the Angular. So in Angular we will use components, we will use services, we will define our routing and various other things we will use in the Angular here. I have not mentioned all the things over here, the mainly things I have mentioned here. For the UI we will use here Bootstrap 4. So with the help of Bootstrap we will design our application UI. So from the front end we will have the request, and that request is going to be processed by the backend, and in the backend what are the data we will retrieve from the database we will send back to the front end, and this everything will run within a Node.js server. So what I will do here, I will set up all these front end and backend thing with the help of Node.js server. So all the things we will run together so that finally we can deploy them as a Node.js server. So this is the architecture we are going to follow in this training program. Setting up project. Now let's set up our mini-stack application project so that we can perform the CRUD operation here. So what I have done here, I have installed already Node.js, I have installed the VS Code as an IDE I will use. I have installed the MongoDB also. If you have not installed, please install all these necessary software. Then I created here a mini-stack folder. So this folder is right now empty. So let me open this folder in my VS Code IDE. So I just open the same folder. There is option a file, open folder, and there is a mini-stack, and open it. So this folder is right now empty. So let me initialize this folder for a Node.js application. So I can use here npm init to initialize it for Node.js application. Now define the application name. So it is asking for the package name. So by default it is suggesting what the folder name we are having. So it is here, let's say mean stack, it's fine. Version number 1.0, description, let's say mean stack CRUD is description here. Entry point you can mention here, so I will use the entry point as app.js. Then enter it, or you can mention a test command also if you are willing to define any test cases. So I'm leaving it empty because I'm not willing to write any test case. A git repository, if you're willing to deploy the code on the GitHub. So I'm not using any git repository, so let's make it empty. Keyword you can mention here, let's say mean stack is the keyword, node, and let's say express. So any keyword you can mention, and these keywords also will help you when you build deploy the code on the git. So when you build put your code on the git, there these keywords are going to be help us. So just mention here author, I can mention here the author, let's say Shailendra @netx.com. License I see it's fine. So it's added here a package.json file for us. Here everything I'm setting up from scratch. I'm not using any predefined any folder structure. So now let's add here a file for app.js where I will write the code to create my Node.js server. So to create here the server, we will use Express.js. So make sure we have installed the Express.js. So let me install the Express.js here and PMI, then Express, and just make the Express as a production dependency. So I just mention here flag that this save. So it will download a package for Express.js. Now let me import the Express package here, constant Express. And using the acquire, I can import the Express here. So this way I imported the Express. Now create the Express application here, constant app equal to, it would be here Express application I'm creating. And here I'm creating here I'm following the ES6 syntax. So constant we use in the ES6, so that syntax I'm following here also. Now to start the server, we need to define here a port number, let's say constant port equal to, it would be here, let's say process.environment, then port number, then let's say 3000. So if port number is not available, let me mention here, let's say 5000, I'm mentioning it. Then use here app.listen and do listening for the port number here. So using the arrow function, I'm defining the message like server is running. So let me use here console log and mention the message here, let's say server is running at, then you can mention here HTTP, and it would be here a local host, then do mention the port number here where actually our server will run. So I can mention the port number here like this way. So this is the way how the server will start, and it by default will run on the port number as 5000 if there is no environment specific setting. So this is the we set up a simple Express server to serve the things. Right now we have not defined any folder where we will write our logic. So let's do one thing. Let's add a folder for server. In the server folder, I will write my Express.js code with the help of Mongoose to query our MongoDB. So in the server folder, we will define our structure for defining the various things here. So let me define the folder structure in the server folder here. So we will define here controllers. So let me define here controllers. So in the controllers we will write the logic to query a database. So let's say I'm adding here a controller named as user.controller.js. So here I did a controller, user controller. So in the user controller, let's write the code so that we can serve the request from here. So here also we will use the Express.js. So let me import the Express here. So it would be here express and then require the express here. Now here using the express router class, we will define the routes for this controller. So let me define here constant router. Let me define the express router class instance here. So it would be here express router, this one. Now let's define the route here, router, it would be get, and now define the route here. Let's say I'm using here slash, and then here I will pass the request comma response, then define the things here. So I'm defining here a default route, and a default route let me pass here a message response dot send, and let's say it is here hello. It is only for testing purpose, later on I will change the code. And finally export this router here. So there is a module dot export, so we are willing to access it outside this file, that's why this router I'm exporting from this JS file. If I will not export it, I cannot import somewhere else to access these methods. Now let me define here a folder for the routes. So in the server folder itself, I will add one more folder with the name, let's say routes. In the routes folder, let's add a route for our APIs, because user control is a API R. So I'm adding here a JS file api.routes.js, and here just like we define the routes in the user controller, similar way I will define here also constant express equal to import the express here. I have imported. Now using the express router class, define the things. So constant router equal to, it would be here express, then use router class to create the instance. Now using the router I can do it here. So here I'm just using here router dot define the use, because here I'm using it for user. So define here the API prefix, how you are willing to call it here. So user controller API, I'm willing to call it here user as a prefix. Now let me import the things. So I'm just going to import here using require, then controllers slash user controller. So this way we imported it here. Now let's export this router to access it in another file. So I'm just exporting it here like this way. So whatever the various APIs we will create here, so further we will create others controller also. Let's say product controller, category controller. So all the controller we will import in this API routes. So it's a common file for the routing now we are having in our application. Now this API routes file we need to import in this app.js, so that we can define the routing for all the APIs in our application. So let me import here the API routes file. So I'm importing here at the top level, let's say constant API, it would be here routes equal to, it would be here require, then it would be here server slash routes, then API routes. So this way I imported it here. Now before defining the server, now let me add the route for the API. So with the help of use method I can define it here. Now define the prefix. So as a prefix I'm using here API, because we will define here the route for my Angular application also, like my for front-end application also. So that's why I'm just going to distinguish between the API routes and the front-end route. So I'm just using here API routes as a API like this way. Now let's start the server to check it how it is responding. So far we have not defined any MongoDB. It's a simple API we are creating with the hello world. So let me start the server here, node server. Just to mention the file name is here node app. Oh, it's showing here error. The reason is the port number 5000 is already in use. So let me try with different port number. 3000 let's say I'm using here. So you can see port number 3000 is available, 5000 is not available. Let me check it here how it is running. So use a local host 3000, then API, and then API name user. So you can see I'm getting here hello. So this hello is written by this user controller here. From here it is returning. Now let's say if you're willing to verify it, let me do change here, hello what. So I have done the change. So I need to restart the server again. So instead of restarting the server again and again, we can configure here the node mon. Let me show you here the way how we can configure the node mon, so that we don't need to restart the server again and again to digest the changes. So make sure you have installed the node mon globally. So this is the package you need to run here, npm i-g node mon. So node mon I have already installed globally. I'm just showing you here how you can install on your machine. So you can see here it is added the node mon globally. Now what I can do here with the help of node mon, I can start my server here. So node mon is a great tool when you are building the Node.js application. So now instead of running here node and the file name, now you have to use node mon and file name here app. Now it started the server here at the port number 3000. Now let's do one more change, hello main stack. I'm just showing here how the node mon will work here. Save it. It's restarted the server again as I did the change here. Now reload the browser and you can see I'm getting the output here. So we have configured the node mon also at the machine level. So I always start the application now node mon then app, and it automatically watch for the changes wherever we are doing in our application, and it automatically restart the server and show us the latest result. So in this way we have done the setup of our backend. Frontend I'm not going to set up right now. Frontend we will set up later on. Let's first build the API with the help of Express and the MongoDB, and then later on we will set up the frontend here. Defining model using Mongoose. So here we are going to use MongoDB as a database. So for MongoDB we are having the ODM object data model as Mongoose. So let's see how we can define a model using the Mongoose here. So for using the Mongoose, first of all we need to download a package from the npm. So let me open one new terminal here. There is an icon plus, so just click on this plus icon and let me install a package Mongoose. So Mongoose, then save it. So here I have installed the Mongoose at the project level. You can find out we are having two packages here, Express and Mongoose here. Now let's define the model. So for defining the model, I'm adding here a folder models in the server. So I'm adding here a models folder. In the models folder, let me add a model file. I'm adding here user.model.js file. And now here let me import the Mongoose here. I'm importing the Mongoose, so it's require, then import here Mongoose. And here we need to define the schema with the help of Mongoose. So Mongoose having the schema also, so let's say separated by comma, I can define a schema also. So let me define here a Mongoose schema also. So it is available from the Mongoose. Let me define here constant schema equal to, it is here Mongoose then schema. Now using the schema I can define the schema for my model. So let me define the user schema equal to, it would be new schema, then define the field. So here I will define the field for my model. So let's say I'm defining here underscore id, because in MongoDB underscore id will act as a primary key as we have in RDBMS. So I'm defining the underscore ID. Now define the underscore ID data type with the help of here Mongo's schema. So I'm just using here schema directly, schema dot, it would be here types, then type object ID, and here I'm willing to generate it automatically. So there is option here auto generate. So it will generate the Mongo's, it will generate the underscore ID automatically. I don't need to pass any value for underscore ID. Let me define the other field. I'm defining here name. Now define the name type as a string. If you're willing to make it required, just use here, let's say required. It is a required colon true. Similarly, I can define the other fields also. Also, let me copy it and define here for contact number, contact, it is also required, and define here for address also. It is for address, and address I'm making here optional. So let me remove on the required true. So this way I have specified it. And here when you will define the schema through the Mongo's, so it will add a version key also. So here I'm not willing to create the version key, so I can define that I can disable the version key as false. I just make the version key as false, so it will not create the extra column for maintaining the version. Now let me use a constant user, and with the help of Mongo's I can create the model here, Mongo's model, then define the model name. So I'm willing to create the collection with the name users. So in the MongoDB database, it will create my collection name as user, then pass the schema, which schema it will follow. So it's here comma, so it will follow here user schema, and finally export this model here. It would be here user. I just exported this model. So this is the way you can define the model here with the help of Mongo's. Similarly, we can define others model also if you are willing to define here. Database configuration. Now let's specify the configuration for our MongoDB database so that we can start using in our Express application. So what I'm doing here, I'm just adding here one more folder with the name config. And this config folder I will define all the configuration it is setting. So this time defining the configuration for the database. So let me add a file with the name db.config. Let me define here the file name as db.js is fine name here. And now let me define here the Mongo's. So let me import it here require, and then it is here Mongo's. Now we need the MongoDB URL so that we can connect with our MongoDB. So let me use a constant MongoDB underscore URL. So using the process I can find out the MongoDB URL from the environment. So let me use here MongoDB URL. So I have not specified the MongoDB URL so far at the environment label. I will specify it. Let me make a connection to Mongo's. So Mongo's dot connect is the method. There you need to pass the URI. So I'm just passing here MongoDB URL, and you can define other options as well if you're willing to define, but it's optional. It's up to you whether you are willing to define or not. Then here you can show the message as well whether connection is made or not. So we are having a message here, let's say Mongo's connection, then do listen for the connection here. If connection will establish, then it will show us connected. So let me specify here a message. So this is the event name I'm listening here. So connected is the event for that I'm listening here. So let me define here a arrow function where I can specify my message. So I'm just defining a message, let's say connected. Similar way I can do the listening for error also. So let me define here error. So if there is any error, so that error we can receive here, let's say error, and that error it will log whatever the error we will receive. So this is the way how we specified on the configuration for the MongoDB database here. But so far we have not specified the environment specific thing. So for the environment in Node.js, we need to install here a one more Node.js package. The package is here .env. So let me install here a one more package to set up the environment specific things. So I'm just using here a .env package I'm installing here like this way. So now I can add here a environment file. So let me add here environment file at the root label. I'm adding the environment file. So it would be here .env. So this environment file I added. Now here I can define the environment specific settings. So here I can define the MongoDB URL. Here I can define the port number to run my application. So let me define here the MongoDB URL. So this is the process the environment. So environment specific setting I'm just going to define here. So here I'm using my local MongoDB. So for local MongoDB there is a specific setting you can define here, like MongoDB, then define localhost, then define the running port number. It is here running port number. Then whatever the database you are willing to create it, you can define here. So let's say I'm willing to create my database name as mean stack. So right now I'm not having any database with the name mean stack. So this is my local connection. If you are using the MongoDB Atlas, if you are using the some other cloud connection, do mention that connection here. And here I can mention the port number also where I'm willing to run my application. So I mentioned the port number here 3000. Now this environment setting I can specify in my app.js file. So open the app.js file, and now here let's configure it. So it should be configured before the Express application. So here I'm configuring it before the Express. Let me put here a comment also, like setup environment settings. So make sure you are putting it before this Express app initialization. So I'm just going to use here require, then import the package that is .env, then use here config to configure it here. So this way it automatically pick up the environment file having the extension .env. So I'm using here by default only one environment file, but if you are willing to define the environment file for the development environment separately, testing environment separately, you can define here by having the extension .env, and you can configure here depending upon the environment. So I'm not defining the environment file here for different environment. I'm using only a common environment file that I mentioned. So now I don't need to mention this 3000 because now this will pick up from my environment file 3000. Similarly, we will pick up the MongoDB also from this environment file. And here behind the scene, my application is constantly running by the node mon. So you can see here, it is showing me it is running here at port number 3000 is already running. And here so far I have not imported the database connection, the database configuration file. So at the top label, let me import the database setting also. So let me import here the database setting, also require, then require here server, then it would be here config, then db. I imported this one also. Now save it. So you can see here it's not able to connect here because it is saying here the URI parameter to get undefined. So the thing is here, make sure what the MongoDB URL we have defined, the name is matching exactly, otherwise it will not able to access it here. And it is here constant MongoDB URI. So here if you will look at, I'm getting the error. The reason is here I just try to set up the database before the environment setting. So this should after this environment setup, then it will work. Now can see it is connected here perfectly. There is no error. So make sure if you are using the environment specific setting, it should be before that. If you will try to do it before this setting, then you will get the error as I received in case of MongoDB connection. So now it is perfectly connected and there is server is running on the 3000. If you want to check it here, you can check it by 3000. It's returning me the same output. So this is the way we successfully set up all the configuration related to the database and related to the environment also. I'm building REST API using Express.js. So now let's see how we can build the REST API. So if you look at already all the things we have set up here now, we already having the user controller. So in the user controller, we need to write the code. So here let's write the code with the help of here Mongoose model. So let me import here the Mongoose model, and after that I will write the code here. So I'm just going to import here a constant user equal to then require and import the Mongoose model. So this here models / user model. I imported it here, and now here I'm just willing to fetch all the documents in the users collection. So use here user, and the Mongoose provide us various method. So I'm just using here find method. So these methods are exactly same as we have in MongoDB, same methods that the Mongoose is providing to us. So use here find, and here I'm just willing to fetch all the document. So use here then define what the documents you are getting. So it will return to us all the documents this way. So finally send this document by calling the response send method. If there is any error while fetching the data, it will return the error. So error I can return here using the status code. So let me use here response then status. Now it's up to you what the status code you are willing to return here. So let's say I'm returning a status code as 500 for the internal server error, then send error. So this way I send the error here. So if there is no document in the database, it will send us. If there is any error while retrieving the data from the database, it will return us 500 as a status code and the given error. So let me check it here how it is working. It's already working fine. Let me try to retrieve the data now. So I'm getting here empty array. If you want to check in the database, so open the MongoDB Compass. So this is the MongoDB Compass. Make sure you have installed. In my case, it is already installed. I open it here, and now let me check what the various database we are having. So far I don't have any database with the name mean stack because we have not added it here so far. So here database and the collection would be created on the fly when first time I will access it. So just do one thing, let me write the code for adding a new document also. So while making the post request, I can add a new document. So let me copy the same code here and let me add here for post. I added here the post one also. So here I'm doing the method chaining here. So this is the method chaining. You can define the separate method also like this way, router dot post, or you can do method chaining also. It's up to you. This is the separate style. Even I can do the method chaining. This is the method chaining. Now here from the request I will retrieve the data. So here I will retrieve the data from the request body. So use here request body for getting the data, and what the data I'm getting here in the request body I need to add. So here from the request body I'm retrieving the object. Now here by calling the method for adding a new record, I can create the new document here. So now for adding a new document, let me call here the create method. So there is a create method available in MongoDB for adding a new document. Let me pass the object, and here it will return me the doc. So here I can return here the information about whether the new document has been added or not. So we return always the status from the API. So we return the status like this way, and as a status code just do mention 201 because it has been done successfully. Then obj I just mentioned here, but here instead of doing the hard code value for the status code, better way is here, let's use a npm package. So there is a node package here which can I download to have all the status code value. So there is a node package http status code. So this node package I'm installing here, it is status codes. And now let's import this package, the top label, and wherever I need the status code I will use this one. So I will use the http status and then import it here. It would be here http status codes, and we don't need to define again. Let's use here comma and define it. And here also I can use like this way here. So now using the http status I can mention here the thing. So just define here http status code. So here I can mention the http status code. It would be here internal server error, and here also I can mention here status code, let's say created, and here also it would be here internal server error. So the hard code I just replace, I'm just using here http status code created internal server error like this way. So make sure my application is running fine. It's running fine. Let me test it here. Okay, so code we have written. Now we need to test the API using the Postman. In the next video I will show you here how we can use Postman for testing this code. Testing REST API using the Postman. Now let's see how we can use Postman for testing our REST API methods. So I have already installed the Postman. So the Postman can be downloaded from the postman.com. So there is a postman.com. From here you can download the Postman. So just download the Postman here. So there is a desktop app for using the Postman here. I already installed here on my local machine. So now whatever the URL I'm having, this is the URL I'm having, I can use in my Postman for making the GET request. It's coming now. And now for making the POST request I can use here POST method. Okay, then I can pass the data as a JSON format here, like as a form URL encoded. But make sure when you're sending the data either in JSON format, either is in form URL encoded. So you have added the body parser also. If there is no body parser, then it will not work for us. So here for the JSON I need to add here the JSON setup. Let me did the setup to read the data as a JSON format. I'm just using here Express and then JSON. So this is the JSON parsing I'm adding here. If I will not add this JSON parsing, then it will not parse the data from the request body if you are sending it in JSON format. So this is for JSON parsing. I did the setup, it's working fine. Now through the Postman I can make the request for adding the new document. So make sure you're passing the thing as per this user model, like name, contact and address. So let me pass here as a JSON data. So I'm using here raw, then use here JSON, and here I'm passing the name as a name. I'm passing, let's say Mohan, and now let me pass here second data at say, let's say contact. So contact, let's say it is here contact, I'm passing in, it is also string type, then pass address. As address, let's say I'm using a Noida. So this is my JSON document I'm passing from here, and make sure you're making the post request and the URI is here exactly same. Now click on the send button. So you can see here I'm getting here internal server error. So something is not correct in this configuration. That's why I'm getting the internal server error here. So here if you will look at why I'm getting the error, if you will look at it's not showing any error in the console. So the error is here, there is a typing error. It should be here status. Let me save it, because in the database if you will look at the Mohan user has been added. This is a mini stack database, there is a users collection and there is a Mohan. So data has been added correctly, but at the time of returning it's throw the error because the spelling was mistake here. So let me try again with the new user to check it how it's whether it's adding the new user or not. So let me add here this time Rama. I'm just adding here, let's say contact number I just change a little bit, it's let's say Delhi. Now let me make the post request again. This time it's added for Rama, it's here 201 as a status code perfectly. If you look at now in the MongoDB, let me click on the find button, refresh it. So you can see I'm getting here Rama also here perfectly. So both the users are the part of this users collection. So in this case my API is responding correctly. It's able to return the list of user also. If you want to check the list of user, just use here get, then make the get request, and you can see I'm getting here both the users. And now let's say here you are willing to return the newly created document properly. So here when you will call the create method here, it will return the newly created document here. So here in place of returning the obj, you should return the doc, so that you get to know what the new document has been created and what the new ID is there. So let me create here one more document again, and this time just change the document name. Let's say I'm adding here Shailendra and a contact number mentioning here like this way, and now let's say it is here and Noid I'm mentioning here now. So it should be here the post request, so make sure it is post request. So body and then JSON, let me change the document here, and now click on the send button. This time if you will see here, it is returning the newly created document with ID also perfectly. Last time it was no returning. So this is the status code here 201, and this is the newly created document. So now it is working perfectly. You can verify in the database also, find, and let me refresh. So you can see newly created user is here. So this way the API retrieve operation are working fine here. Even the post operation is also working fine here. The similar way I can write the code here to fetch the user based upon the user ID. So what I can do here, let me chain one more method for fetching the user ID, for fetching the user based upon the user ID. So let me pass here ID as a root parameter, and let me define, let's say let ID equal to, it would be a request dot params then ID. Then in the find I can mention here the filter condition, or either I can use here find by ID. So there is a method here find by ID. So this method I can also use. Then I can pass the ID here, and what are the document I will get here, it will return to us. So here I'm returning here the document. If nothing is available, like something is not correct, it will return the internal server error here this way. So now let me check the user here based upon the user ID. So here we have this user which we created right now. Let me try to fetch it here based upon the user ID here, then send. It's available now. So perfectly it is returning a single user, and here I just passed the ID. So this way these three methods are working fine. So this method is here for returning all the users. This method is here for returning a user based upon the user ID, and this method is here for creating a new user. So here retrieve and create methods are working fine here. Update and delete operations. Now let's see how we can write the code for performing the update and delete operation. So let's add two more methods. So first write the code for update operation. So in case of update, we can use the put method. So here what I'm doing here, I'm just going to use the put method this time. So just do the method chaining again. I'm using here put method, and put method usually we pass the data in the request body as well as the document which we are willing to update. We pass and the URL also. So this is the root parameter I'm passing here, and from the body I will get the things here. So which document you are willing to update, I will get in the root parameter. Say let's say request dot params, it would be here id. Now let me write the code to update the things here. It would be here find by id and update. So this is the method I'm just mentioning here. Then pass the id which we are willing to find, then mention the field which you are willing to update. So let's say here I'm willing to update the name field, so it would be here obj.name. I'm willing to update here, let's say email, so it would be here obj.email. So what are the model you are having? It's a name, address and contact. Okay, it's a name, contact and address. So all the fields which we are receiving from there, I'm willing to update. The third field is here address, I'm mentioning now. So this way I mentioned here, I'm willing to update name, contact number and address. And finally, when it will be done here update, so here we will receive the OK. So we'll return here OK as a status code, like it has been updated successfully. So let me test the update operation whether it's working fine or not. So open the Postman again, and if you will look at here, this is my user Shailendra. So this user I'm willing to update here. So to update it, let's make the put request, and here as a JSON document we need to pass the things. So let me pass here the things. So this is the ID. I will pass in the URL put, and here I'm not willing to pass the ID in the body. It's up to you. If you can pass, you can pass it here, that you can skip it. Let me pass my name as Shailendra Chauhan. Let's say that this I'm changing here, let's say Greater Noida. So this way I'm just using here put request. These values I just change. Now make the put request here, just click on the send button. If everything is fine, it should return. So you can see it is here 200 as a status code. And now let me check in the database whether it's updated or not. I refresh it. It's updated now with Shailendra Chauhan, and address is here Greater Noida. So perfectly it is working fine. It's written as the updated document perfectly. So here I'm not able to get the updated value of the document because I am not following the proper signature of the find by ID and update. If you're willing to follow the proper signature of find by ID and update, so just do one thing, just define here like this way. Let's say it would be here error then doc, like this way. Here we will get the things. So here I can check, let's say if error, then return the error status code, else show like document has been updated. So here I can mention here internal server error, then mention the error this way. So this is the proper signature for the find by ID and update. Let's see how it's showing the updated document. So this time let's say I'm changing here the name Shailendra Kumar, and address let's say I'm making here Noida. The same request I'm using, I'm just updated the value, click on the send button, and now you can see it is showing us the last value which was before. So before the updation, this was the value here. If you will look at now in the database, it is updated, but the last value it is showing to me. It's Kumar here, but here it's showing the last value. like the document view updated. So this was the last value and this is the new value here. So this is old value, this is the new value here. So update is working fine. Now let me write the code for delete also. So as we have written the code for get, similarly I can write the code for delete also. I need to just change the verb from get to delete. So let me use here delete verb, and there is a method here find by id and delete. So this one I'm using here, find by id and delete. If everything is fine, we can return here. And here if you're not returning any status code, so by default status code would be here 200. So you don't need to pass here the status code explicitly. By default it would be 200. If you're willing to pass here the status code explicitly, you can pass like this way. It is the explicit status code I'm passing, but it is not required because by default it is 200. So now let me check it here how the delete is working. So the same record, let's say I'm willing to delete by making the delete request. So just use here delete request, and nothing we are passing in the body. So body is nothing here. So it's here delete user ID and click on the send. If everything is fine, it should return here the user has been deleted. It's 200 as okay. This is the user is deleted for us. Let me verify in the database, refresh it. It has been deleted now. So we don't have any user with the name Shailendra now. It has been deleted completely. So in this case, my REST API is working fine for the CRUD operation. We successfully tested it using the Postman. So now this REST API is ready to consume in the front end. So front end here you can build using Angular. You can build here front end using the React.js also, because the API would be same. It doesn't mean whether you are using Angular and React. Any front end you can use here. Setting up front end using Angular. Now let's see how we can set up our front end project with the help of Angular, and there we will consume this REST API. So here what I'm doing here, I'm just going to close all the open files here. Let me kill the terminal also. And now let's create a new terminal here from scratch. And make sure you have installed the Angular CLI. So if you have not installed the Angular CLI, you can install it here. npm i-g, and there is a command here angular /CLI. So it will download the latest version of Angular from the npm.js.com. Install it here. So if you will look at here, it's downloaded the Angular CLI for me, and the latest version of Angular CLI is here 8.3.25. so it using here Angular 8.x. So now in the same project, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to create a Angular project using the Angular CLI. So let me create here Angular project using the Angular CLI. So ng new, then define here project name. So here the project name is, let's say, client. So here we will have two folder, server for backend code and client for front end code. Same thing I'm doing here. So I'm creating here a folder name client for the front end. So let me enter it here. It will ask for the routing. Let's configure the routing also. I'm using a CSS. Perfect. It's created the client folder now, and in the client folder it is downloading all the necessary packages so that the Angular application we can start here. So now there are two folders here, one for the front end and one for the back end. So let's wait. So it installed my Angular all the dependency. Now let's go into the client folder, cd client, and from the client folder I will start my Angular application by using ng serve command -o. It will open me the default browser. Let me verify Angular application is running fine. I stopped all the server side code. First let's test the front end. Later on we will club the front end back end together. So you can see here, this is my default template now in the Angular. So it's working fine. The default template for Angular, it's running fine. So it's a default markup is showing to me. Perfect. Now let me do here the necessary changes so that I can consume the API here. So let me install here the Bootstrap first of all, so that we can design the UI. So let me add a new terminal again and make sure you are the part of the client folder. Remember it, whenever you are using the any node package in the client, let's say in the front end, make sure you're the part of the client folder. So let me install here Bootstrap latest version and then save it. And in the angular.json file, I need to mention the path for the style sheet. So let me mention here the path for the style sheet. It would be here node underscore modules. Then the package name, it is here Bootstrap. Then distribution, then CSS, then file name. So this way we configure the Bootstrap globally. So Bootstrap we added here globally. Now you can use the Bootstrap component to design the UI. Now next step is here, let me remove the unnecessary generated code here. If you will look at in the src, we are having here app component.html, which is containing here the default markup, like the default design, which is actually not required by us. So let me remove it completely. I have removed completely. Now let's set up it using the Bootstrap. So I'm using here class container for the Bootstrap and wrap it in the Bootstrap. And if you're willing to learn about the Angular in detail and Bootstrap in detail, so do refer the .NET Angular courses and the .NET Bootstrap courses. I'm not willing to tell you about the routing and all the things in detail. I'm just going to set up it quickly. Now let me define here the Bootstrap for menu. So for Bootstrap for menu, I have installed here a Bootstrap snip pack, using which I can generate the Bootstrap menu easily. So I'm just using here navbar minimal ul. I created the Bootstrap menu here with navbar minimal. If you're willing to have such snips, so you have to install in a VS Code extension. So extension is here Bootstrap for snips. So this is the extension I have installed for Bootstrap snips, using which you can generate this markup. So let me mention here the linking. So I'm just mentioning here the link. So first one here, let's say for user list, and then do mention here router link. So I'm just using here router link. It would be here. So now define here the link. So as a home page, I will use it here now. And here we can define the brand setting also. So let me define here anchor tag for the brand setting. So I'm just using a class, then it would be here navbar dash brand. Navbar dash brand. This is the CSS class available in Bootstrap for the brand here. Similar with the route link, I can define here. And here we are creating here a mini stack project. So it's a mini stack app. So this is the brand name I have specified. The similar way I can define here the link for create also. Right now I have not specified any routing, but I will define the routing for create also this way. Now let's see how the UI is looking here. So reload the things. So you can see here it not showing the proper UI here, but it's showing the link. The reason is here I have not restarted my Angular application. So whenever you will do the change in the angular.json file, so this is my angular.json file, every time you need to restart the Angular server. Same thing I need to do here. Let me stop it using Ctrl C and start it again, ng serve. So now let's reload the browser, and you can see it's having the proper menu now, user list and the create. So right now I have not specified the routing. I will define the routing, then I will do it. So this way we have successfully configured my Angular application within the same project. Configure routing. Now let's configure the routing in Angular project. So here our application already running. So let me open the new terminal, and there I will create the others component also. So right now I'm having only app component. So here let's remove the unnecessary file which we are not using. So test file I have removed. I have just removed the CSS file also. So now everything is looking fine. So make sure from the app component you have removed the reference of CSS file also, and you have removed the reference of title also. Now using the Angular CLI I can add the others component also. So let me create here a component ng. I'm using here generate command to generate a component. Now define the component name. Let's say I'm willing to create a component with the name create. And here I'm not willing to define the separate style sheet, so I'm using here is, then skip test. So it will create a component with the name create. So now we are having a component with the name create, and here I have skipped the style sheet, and here I have skipped the test cases. Similarly I can define here a component for users also for listing purpose. So I'm creating here users for listing purpose. So we have done here properly. So now let me define the routing for these two components. So open here app routing module, which is already created here, and here I will define the routing. So let me define here routing for the user listing. So here I will define the path. So path would be here empty, and then define here component. So component I need to import, it would be here users component. Similarly let's define another path also. So its path, it would be here create, and define here create component like this way. So we have specified the path for users, we have specified the path for create also. Similarly I can specify the path for edit also. So I'm just using here edit, then use here :id, and then define the component name here create. So I'm not willing to create a separate component, I'm willing to use the same component create for create operation as well as edit operation also. So that's fine, we have specified the routing. Now if you will open the browser, so you can see I'm getting here user works as output. If you will go for create, I'm getting here create works. So routing is perfectly working here. What we set up, creating service. Now let's see how we can create the service in Angular so that we can consume our REST API. So in Angular, whenever there is a requirement to perform the server side operation, so that code we always write in the services here. So let's create a service. So what I'm doing here in the Angular, I can create the service. So just do one thing. Just add here a folder with the name services, or you can create the folder using the Angular CLI also. Let's say I'm just creating here a service using the Angular CLI command. So ng s4 service, then define the service name. So I'm willing to create a service here within the folder services, and my service name is, let's say, user. So this is my service name, and this is the location I'm willing to create. And then skip test. I'm not willing to create the test cases, I'm using here skip test. So you can see it's created here services folder, and then it's created the user service. Now let me write the code in user service to call the REST API. So there is a user service is created here properly, and now to call the REST API we need to import here the HTTP client from Angular common HTTP module. So let me import here using @Angular/common/HTTP. Now here I will import the HTTP client. HTTP client I'm importing here. So HTTP client will help us to perform the CRUD operation here, or you can say it will help us to call the REST API. And here let me use a single quote. It is only just linting error, that's fine. And here let me define the methods. So I'm defining here a method get users for getting all the users from the database. And here we will use the observable. So for observable, refer to the Angular courses. There we will find out the information about the observable. So here, before creating the observable to store the data, first of all we need to create a model class here. So let's do one thing. Here in the app folder, let's add here one more folder with the name models. In the models, I will add a file with the name user.ts. And what are the properties we are having in the user model in the Express? Similar way, this model will have the properties here. So let me define here a class in the TypeScript. So it is here export class. So export class user. Now define the field here. I'm defining the field here. Let's say string id. Name would be here. Let's say string. Then address would be here a string. Then contact would be here a string. So this way we have defined the field here. So first one is a semicolon. So perfectly we have defined the class. So this model now we will import in this user service for returning the data. So in the observable, I need to define here a array for the user which we are returning as a response. So here let me use here return and then use this HTTP client. So this HTTP client instance we have not created. So let me create the instance of this HTTP client here. So what I can do here, I can use here the dependency injection. So let me use here private client and it would be here HTTP client here using the DI. I'm just going to use it here. So it would be here this dot return this dot, it would be here client. So this dot client, then we will get the method here get, post, update and delete. So all the methods will be available here. So here actually I have not specified the method signature properly. That's why it's not working fine. Now it's looking fine. Okay. And then you can see I'm getting here get method. In the get method, we need to pass the URL to call the API. So what we can do here in Angular to define the environment specific setting as we specified in our Express application. There is a environment folder. In the environment folder, I can specify the environment specific setting for production environment and for the development environment. So just do one thing here. Let's define here the API address. So where my API is running, my API is running at the port number 3000. So let me mention here HTTP and then localhost and it is here, let's say 3000. We have mentioned now. Similarly, you will have the API in the production machine also. So that would be the different address, but right now I'm defining the same. So this one I will import. So this can be imported here using the environment. So this is the environment file I can import to access the API base address. So let me use here environment file which I imported at the top level, and even you can import it, let's say like as env. So I'm just using here short name environment. It would be here API address, then whatever the API you are willing to call. I'm willing to call here API name as user, because at the same address we can have more than one API, but here I'm calling the API as user. And what are the response we will get? Let's convert into the user array this way. So this is the way we are consuming here users by calling the get user method. The similar way we can write the code for other methods also. So let me write the code here for fetching the user based upon the user ID here. So I will do here ID, let's say string type, and this time let me concatenate the ID also this way, and it is here get user, and this time we are returning here only single user like this way. Now let's see how we can use this service in our component to show the list of user. So in service we created two methods. Others method I will create later on. First, let's use these two methods for showing the result. Listing users. Now let's see how we can show the list of user using the Angular. So what I'm doing here, in the user list component, so there is a users component, not the user list component, sorry. So in the users component, I will import my user service. So let me import here a user service. So I'm using here again dependency injection. So user service, then use here a user service. I import it now. Now here at the page load method, I can retrieve the list of user from the database. So let me define here a users array. So it would be here user array like this way. Now let me use, let's say this dot user service, call the get users method, then do subscribe, then I'm using a response, and in the response let me assign the value to the user. So this dot users equal to response. So this way we are calling the get users method in the user service, and it will return the list of users. So now this users array, we need to show on the users HTML page for showing the list of user to us. So let me define here heading. It would be here user list. Now let me define horizontal line, and now use here a table. So I'm just using here a bootstrap table. So I can use here a bootstrap table default. It's created a table for me automatically using the snips. And now let's define here, let's say serial number. I'm defining let's say name, then contact, then address. So these are the fields we are having now here. And now let me specify the cell. So here the tr I can repeat here using the for loop in the Angular. So let me use here ng4. So ng4 I'm using here for users, and for having the index I'm using a let equal to index. So index is a predefined in the ng4, which will return us the index number 0, 1, 2, 3 like this way. So your index number will start from 0. So I will add here a 1 so that it will start from 1 now. Now let me mention here all the fields which we are willing to show here. So it is here, let's say item dot. So let me mention here item dot name, item dot contact, and item dot address like this way. So this way it will show us the list of user. So what the data I'm getting here, I'm repeating using the tr and showing over here perfectly. So let's see how it is working here. So make sure your API as well as your front end both are running. So front end is running here, but API is not running. If you will look at now, I'm not getting anything because my API is not running. So let's open one more terminal and there start the API using node mon. Now it is running. Now let me reload the things and go to the users list, and let's have a look in the console. Okay, if you will look at here, it is showing me the error. It is showing the error because the service I have not injected globally. So what the user service you are using, to use it across the application, make sure in the provider you have added it here. So user service now I have added. Now it should not show us any error. So user list. So we added the user service, but we have not added the HTTP client also. So I have not fixed these errors so that you will also learn how to fix the things. So here now it is showing the error for HTTP client. So now open the app module. There at the top label, let me mention the import statement and use here @angular/common/http. This way I imported, and let me use here single quote. Now here I can use here HTTP client module. That one I need to import. Now this HTTP client module I will import here so that I can use the HTTP client in my application. If you will look at now, it's not showing any error. It's perfectly working fine. But only one thing I'm getting here. This is the different error, zone label error. Okay, so let me see what we are requesting here. So we are requesting user service, get users, and here API address we have mentioned properly. So let me check in the environment label. It's HTTP localhost 3000. Then it should be API also. So I forget to mention API. So do mention API here and API here perfectly. Now let me check it now. So make sure the code has been rebuilt again. So to verify, open the Angular. So that's rebuilt again. So now you can see it is showing us HTTP API user. So I know we will face this error because my Angular application is running on the port number 4200 and my API is running at the port number 3000. So always you will get this error. You will get the access control allow origin error because both are running on the different port number. So what you need to do here, you need to enable the CORS at the API side, at the REST API side. So let me enable the CORS there so that I can consume my REST API in the front end. So to enable the CORS here through the command, let me install one more package, npm install CORS, and do mention save also. I forget to mention the save. Okay, now let's import the CORS also here at the top level. So I'm importing here, let's say CORS equal to, it would be here require, and let me import the CORS. Now CORS I need to configure at app label app.use and CORS like this way. Now I configure the CORS at the API label. Now let's check whether the server is working fine or not. Now let's try to make the request again, and you can see I'm getting the data. I'm getting the user now Mohan, I'm getting the user now Rama. So this is running on the port number 4200 and my REST API is running at the port number 3000. So that's why I need to enable the CORS over there to access my API. It's working fine, it's also working fine. So this is the way we completed here the retrieve operation successfully with the help of Angular. The similar way I will write the code for create, update and delete operation also. Creating user. Now let's write the code for adding a new user in the database. So we already created a user service here where we have written the code for fetching the user list and for fetching a single user based upon the user ID. Similar way we will write the code for adding a new user. So let me write the code here for adding a user here. So add a user where I will receive the user model. So I'm just going to receive here the user model. So make sure we are having here user model. If you will look at, we already define here a user model. So this user model we will accept here and we will pass. Now as a return type it would be here again observable, and in the observable we will return the HTTP response. So it would be here HTTP response, and in the HTTP response the type would be here any, like this way. Now here we need to return something from here. So because its return type is here observable, HTTP response any. So using the HTTP client we can make the post request here. So let's use this dot client, then call here the method post, then user environment variable. So environment, then it would be here API address plus the API which we are willing to call. So we are willing to call here user API, and here we are willing to pass the data. So data we need to pass here as a JSON string. So it is a JavaScript object, so we need to convert into the JSON string. So that is here JSON, and in the JSON we can call the string method, stringify method, to convert the JavaScript object into the JSON string. So this way I did it here. Now finally we need to return here the response. So here response, we need to observe the response here. So observe what we are willing to observe. We are willing to observe here response. So do mention here observe response, and we need to pass here header also, because here we are passing the data as a JSON format. So we need to tell the headers of the request. So here I'm just going to pass the headers of the request. So this dot header. So far I have not specified any header. I will define the header, then that headers I will pass. So make sure you have defined the headers at the constructor label. So let's define here headers colon, it would be here headers. So let me specify the headers in the constructor label. So this dot headers. Now in the header just tell about what the content type we are willing to pass here. So we are willing to pass here content as JSON. So I'm just going to define here HTTP headers, and HTTP headers I'm just going to mention here content type, and content type would be here application / JSON. So this is the content type we have mentioned, and make sure we have defined the class for headers also. So the proper class name is here HTTP headers, not headers. So these HTTP headers we already added, and same we have mentioned here now. So same HTTP headers we are passing from here when we are making the request for adding the new user here. And here HTTP response we have not specified here. So at the top level let me define HTTP response also. So now if you will look at, I'm not getting any error. It's only recommendation like we should use single quote in place of double quotes, then mention a semicolon. That's it. So now we have written the code for adding a new user through the API, and at the API level we already written the code for adding a new user. If you will look at in the server, here we are having the user controller where we already written the code for adding a new user, and here we already written the code for edit and delete also. So in the backend we don't need to do any change. We need to do the change only in the front end side. That's perfect. So now this user service we will access in our create component for adding a new component. So here at the constructor label let me inject it. So private user service colon user service. So now here we need to create a HTML form so that we can create a new user. So here we can use either Angular template driven form, either we can use Angular model driven form. So here I'm just going to use the Angular template driven form, that is simple to use. So let me define here the instance of the user model class. So I added here the reference of user class here. If you will look at its user, let me initialize it. It would be here this dot user equal to new user, this way. So I added it here. Now let me define the design for the form here. So we already added the bootstrap. So using the bootstrap we can create the HTML form. So let me specify here heading. Let's say create a user would be the heading here, then horizontal line, and here let me define here the HTML form. So using the bootstrap we can define the HTML form. So use here form tag and define here the class here. So let me define here first of all the div, so that we can define the things over here. So let me define here div. It would be here class would be here form dash group. So So this is a bootstrap CSS class to group the label and to group the text box. So let me define here the label. So for label I'm using here name, and let me define here text box. So text box we are defining here for name, so it would be here input type text, then define the text box name, so it would be here name for the text box. And here we need to use here two-way data binding. So for two-way data binding we use here ng model. So let me define here ng model for two-way data binding. In ng model, let's define here the user instance property for which we are willing to create the text box. So we are willing to create the text box for name property, so I have mentioned here name. Then what are the validation you are willing to mention here? Let's mention here required, and here let's define here bootstrap class, and it is here form des control. So these are bootstrap class I have specified here. And for using the template driven form, make sure you have added a module reference in app module. So if you will look at here, we don't have any reference for the forms module, so that's why it is giving the error. So let me add the reference of forms module here. So I'm adding here forms, and here it would be here forms module. I added here. This forms module we need to import in this import section. And guys, if you are willing to know about the Angular forms, so we already having a course on .NET about the Angular forms. So please do refer that course, how we can create the Angular various forms for performing the validation. Here I'm not covering the forms things, I'm just quickly writing the code so that we can complete this CRUD operation. Now here I can use the div for showing the error message. So here I can use the if statement. So ng if I'm using, then write the condition here. So to get the information about the error, we need to define the reference name. So let me define the reference name using the hash and define here ng model. So this reference name I'm using to find out the state of this input control. So let me use here name dot errors if there is any error, and then here I can define the class for showing the error in red color. So there is a class here text danger to show all the error messages in the red color, and here I can specify my error message, please enter name, like this way. And here I am willing to show the error messages on button click, so that would be the form submission. So I'm just using here form. So make sure you have defined the reference name for the form also. So it would be here form, then use here ng form directory. Now using this reference name, I'm willing to find out whether the form is submitted or not, this way. And finally let's add a submit button. So what I'm doing here, I'm adding here a div. There I'm defining the submit button. Input type I would be here submit, and then define the value. So value would be here, let's say save, and we can define here the bootstrap classes. So it would be here btn des primary. This is a button class to make the button as blue color. And if you're willing to learn about the bootstrap, so just refer the bootstrap courses. You will get to know what are the various classes are available for decorating the buttons. So now if you will see here, everything is building successfully, there is no error. So let me go to the create page. So you can see it is showing me a single text box with the label here. And what you can do here for the designing purpose, you can make it small. So I can wrap this one in a div like this way, and I can define the class, let's say column des sum des, let's say 5 I'm using. So So it would be the short now in the design. You can see it's now short in the design. And the rest of the 7 you can use for the right sidebar, unlike for something else you can use it. So if you look at here, if I'm clicking here, it's showing the error message, please enter name. Similarly, we will write the code for others properties also. So that code I'm not going to write it again because it would be the wasting of the time, because already we are having the similar codes on the .NET X, which you can refer to learn about the Angular forms. So you can go to the .NETx.com and here just refer to the Frontend and Angular. Here we already having a course Angular forms and validation. So just refer to this course and you will get to know how to use the forms and validation in Angular. So let me mention here the code for others properties also. So I just copied and pasted directly so that we can quickly make the things. So you can see we are having now name, address and contact number. And these things, if you will look at, we are having in the user model. If you will look at, we are having user model containing name, address and contact number. And now here we need to do one thing here. Make sure you are mentioning the class as danger in place of color red. I'm just replacing it. So when we will submit the form, so we need to receive the value on the controller in the component class. So for receiving the value, we need to handle the form submit event. In the form submit event, we will receive the value using a method save data. And save data, I will receive the value of the submitted form. So let me define the save data method in this create component. And here the posted form, so this is my posted form I'm posting here. Oh, it's not on div, it should be on the form level here. So this form I'm posting here, so I will receive the same form here, form, and it would be here ng form, like this way. Now let's check the form validity here. If form dot valid means all the validation has been passed. Now write the code for saving the data into database. So now using the user service, we can write the code for adding the user into database. So user service, then call the method add user, then pass here this dot user model instance, then do subscribe for the changes, and as a response I will get the response from the server. So what response we'll get from the API? If you will look at in the API, so this is my API. So it will return the status code as 201, or it will return the created document also. So this status code I will find out whether the user has been created or not. So same condition I'm writing here, like if the response dot status equal to 201, it means the new user has been created. So finally we need to redirect to the user listing page. So for the redirection we need to import here the router class. So let me import here router colon, it would be here router. So let me use here this dot router. This is the one I'm using here. So make sure you are making it access modifier also if you are willing to make the class member. So this dot router, and then navigate, and then navigate here to the user listing page. So that is here for slash. So this is the one, the code we have written for creating the user, and after creating the user it will redirect to the user listing page. Let's see how it is working here. So this is my user listing page and I'm already having user Mohan. Let me add a user. I'm adding here a user Ram. Address would be here Noida, and then let me mention a contact number this way. Click on the save button and you can see it's added here successfully. So this way we have completed our create operation successfully with the help of Angular and the Express.js REST API. Editing user. So far we have written the code for adding a new user. Now let's see how we can write the code for editing an existing user. So what I'm doing here in the user listing page, let me define the link to navigate to the user edit page. So here I'm already having my users component, and in the users component we will write the code. So the user components, let's define here one more column for the actions. So I'm defining here actions, and here let's define here the td containing the link for edit. So I'm defining here anchor tag, and it would be here on the router link, and in the router link I will define the router link for edit. So let me define here edit, then pass here primary key of the record. So in our case it is here item dot underscore id. So in the model of the user model we are having underscore id as a key, and then let's mention here edit, and here I can define the button class also. So button class would be here btn dash, it would be here, let's say success. So success would be here for green color, I specified here. So for edit we need to define here the route also. So open the app routing module, and here let's define a route for edit. So if you will look at for edit route, we already specified, that's good, because I'm not willing to create the separate component for edit. I'm willing to use it as it is. So this id I will receive at the create component page load. So when the component will be loaded, so there we will access this id parameters. So let me open the create component. So this is the ng on init, where we will access the parameter value. So here using the active root service I can access the parameter value. So let me define here private root, and it is here activated root service through which I can access the value. Import the active root at the top label. So we already imported here, that's fine. Now let me use here this activated root service. So it is here this dot, it is, let's say root, then params, then subscribe for the parameters here. So it would be here, let's say params, and all these params value we can access here using this receive parameters. So let me access the id here. So it would be here params dot id, whatever the parameter name we are having. So in our case parameter name is id here, so with the same I am accessing here. Now by passing the id I can access the user information, but before that make sure id is not undefined. If we have not passed the id, it would be undefined. So that I'm checking here, it should not be undefined. Now use here this dot user service, then call the method get user and pass the id, then do subscribe to the response. And what response we are receiving, let's assign it to the user class instance. So the user class instance we have assigned the response here successfully, like this way. So this is the way we specified the things here correctly. So when you will now click on the edit link, so it will redirect to the create page and will populate the value. Let's see how it is working here. It's edit link, click over here, and you can see it is showing me the value, and this is the id, it is showing at the URL. But we need to change the label also. So label should be here edit user, not the create user. So for label also we need to do the changes here. So let me write there few condition, and based upon that we will change the label name. So we are using here h2 for create. Let me add here one more h2 for edit. Now we define the condition. So I'm just using here hidden, and a hidden it would be here a user dot underscore ID if it is undefined. So it would be undefined when we are creating the new user. So in that case, we need to show this label. We need to show this heading. So just mention here not equal to, because hidden will hide it if it is true. But we need to show it. So that's why I'm using here not equal to. The similar way we need to check here if ID not equal to undefined. It should be not equal to undefined. It should be here added user. Now let's see. Now it is changing the label as added user now. But when you will click for create, it is create user. So it's perfectly changing the label now. Now we need to handle the save button click. So for the save button click, if you will look at, we already having the save data method. So in the save data method, we need to find out whether user is in edit mode, whether the user for creating a new user. So if the user would be in edit mode, so there would be the underscore ID. So primary key would be the part of this user instance. So that I can check here if this dot user dot underscore ID not equal to undefined. That means it is edit, else it is create. So this way I just mention the condition here. So now here we need to define one more method for update user. So update user method we have not written so far. We will write in the user service. But let's complete the code here. So when it will be done successfully, it will return the status code as success. Okay. So that's why I'm comparing here 200. Now let's write the code for update user in user service. So as we have written the code for add user, similar way, I'm writing the code for update user also. And in update user, we need to make the put request. Because if you will look at in our Express API, we are expecting the put request. You can see. So this is the put request where we are updating the things. Find by ID and update. So in the put request, we need to pass one parameter in the URL, and the other thing would be here in the request body. So same thing I'm doing here. I'm making the put request here and pass here one parameter in the URL. So it would be here user underscore ID. This parameter I'm passing here. Other thing would be same. So this is the way we completed the code for update user here perfectly without any issue. So let me check how it is working the update. So let me update it here, Ram Kumar. Then click on the save. So you can see this has been updated successfully without an issue. If you're willing to create a new user, you can create a new user itself. Let's say I'm adding a new user, Shailendra. Let's say Delhi and contact number. Save it, it's added. So perfectly working the create operation, perfectly working the edit operation here. Deleting user. Now let's see how we can write the code to delete a user. So we already did the code for add and update. So now let's write the code first of all for delete a user in the user service. So as we have written the code for get a user, similar way I can write the code here for delete user also. So it is here, let's say delete user, and this time it will not return any user. It will return here the HTTP response any. So I'm just using here HTTP response any like this way, and finally make the delete request this way. I need to pass here a parameter also. So parameter we are passing here perfectly, and there should not be any user. It should be here HTTP response any. So it would be here HTTP response any this way. And here just like to the add, here also we need to listen for the response. So just do mention here headers. So it would be, let's say, observe then do mention here for response. This way I mention it here. And here is a best practice in add user also, you should mention the HTTP response here also. Let me mention here HTTP response any. It should be like this way. So there is no error, it's the error of breaking the things into new line. Perfectly, it's working fine. So I updated the HTTP response any here also, and HTTP response any here also. So now this delete user I will call for deleting the user. So let's go to the user listing page. So now the user listing page, we will define a anchor tag. There we will define the click event. So let me define the anchor tag, and it would be here, let's say href, and it would be here in JavaScript, and then it is here void 0. So I'm using here JavaScript void 0 so that I can disable the anchor tag default behavior. So I'm just using here click. So using the click, we will capture the click event. So it should be wrapped in the parenthesis. So it is here parenthesis like this way. Now define here a method delete user. Then pass the primary key. Based upon that, we will delete it. So I'm using here item dot underscore id, and then define the name of the link, it is delete. And to show this anchor tag as a button, let me mention a class. So it would be here class btn danger. And to maintain the gap between these two buttons, let me mention here nbsp. So this way I have mentioned the gap between these two buttons. Now this delete user I will define in my users component class. So open here users component class. There I will write the code like this way. So define here id as a receiving parameter, and based upon the id we will delete the code. So here what I will do here, I will write the code like if, just define here a confirm box to confirm the action, like are you sure to delete. This way I'm just confirming the action. So when user will click on the OK button, that time we will call the user service delete method. User service delete user, then pass the id, then do subscribe for the changes, and whatever the response we will get, based upon that we will respond. So when we will delete the user, so it will return the status code again as 200, so that I can check it here. Let's say if response dot status equal to 200, that means the operation has been successful. Same you can verify in your Express API also. In Express API, in user control, you will find out what we are doing. We are just doing here response send docs. So by default status here is 200 if it is successful, but if you want to mention it explicitly, so you can mention it here explicitly also like this way. So it would be here okay. So this way I just change the status code as 200 explicitly. By default is 200, and we are sending the docs which we are actually deleting it. So it is here doc which we are deleting it. Same thing I'm checking. So here you are having two options, either again make the request for fetching the all users to display the things, and the second option is here we already having the users array in the memory of the page. So from the memory of the page, if user is deleted successfully from the database, by using a for loop I can delete the things. So same thing I'm doing here, I'm just using here a for loop here, and from the in memory users list I'm just going to delete it here. So this length. Now let me check here if id which we requested to delete it's matching with this dot users index number then underscore id. If both are matching, Then using the splice method, I can delete that particular record. Same thing I'm doing here using the splice. I can delete that particular record. So in the splice, it accepts the index number from where you're willing to delete it, the number of record. So I'm willing to delete here only one record. After deleting that one record, just came out from the for loop so that it will not delete any other record here. So this is the way how it is working. Let me check it. Open the things. Now you can see perfectly I'm getting here two buttons, edit and delete. Let me click on the delete button. So you can see I'm getting here, are you sure to delete? Okay, it's now deleted. Delete, cancel, refresh it. It's not deleting the user. So this is the way the delete operation is working fine with the help of Angular and Express.js. Starting a project on local machine. So when you will download the source code of this sample, so let me show you here how you can set up it on the local machine. So after downloading, you will get here a folder containing the client and the server folder here. So here I have removed the node underscore modules because this would be in bigger size. So I have removed the node underscore module folder from the root label as well as within the client folder. So what you need to do here, you need to just open these folder in the VS Code, and at the root label you need to run the command npm install for installing all the node packages here. So you can see I'm already in this location, and then run the command here npm install. It will download all the necessary packages to set up my Express.js application. Similar way, I need to go into the client folder here, cd client. In the client folder also need to run the command npm install. It will download all the Angular dependencies and will set up it. And every time when you will start this one like server, so make sure you are at the root label and you have installed the node mon also on your machine. If you have not installed, you can install the node mon using the command npm i-g node mon. Run this command, it will download the node monster package so that you can run the Express application in the watch mode. So what are the changes you will do? It automatically restart the Node.js server to digest those changes. So this is the way it is installing the node monster. After that you can run the command node mon to start your Node.js server. Node mon, and it's here app. So you can see it's starting my server here using the node monster. It's perfectly running the port number 3000. If the port number 3000 is not available on a machine, you can change it by changing the value in the environment variable. And make sure you have installed the MongoDB also. So here I'm accessing the MongoDB using the MongoDB Compass. So make sure you have installed the MongoDB Compass also on the machine. So when you will open the MongoDB Compass, so by default it will run on the default port number over there. So the default port number for the MongoDB is here 27017 by default. So when you will run it, you will get this screen. So directly you can click on the connect button. It will connect it, and you can see it is showing the default port number also. And it automatically generates the database for us. You don't need to create it manually when you will run the Express application. So test the Express application with the help of Postman, and when you are sure everything is working fine, just go into the client folder and here run the Angular command ng-serve to run the Angular application. So at the time of making this video, the Angular 9 has been released, but in my local it is Angular 8. But there is no so much difference in Angular 8 and Angular 9 in terms of features. Angular 9 only having the differences in terms of only rendering view engine. So from Angular 9 they are using the IV, but the syntax wise and the coding wise there is no differences. So either you can use Angular 9, the code of writing, the thing should be same. So what are the code we have written, it is perfectly valid for Angular 6, Angular 7, Angular 8, Angular 9. Even it will work in Angular 10 also, I'm sure. So this is the way I set up the project after downloading it. Similar way, you need to set up it on the local machine when you will try this sample.